Friends, welcome to my channel. Before listening to this story, I will ask you to like and subscribe. It's not difficult for you, but it's nice for me, and we're starting. It was a casual remark that started it all. I had just got off the elevator at work when Charlie told Mel, "Becca and Phil, if they can." Then they saw me and said, "Good morning, Rob," and then they both went to their desks. When I entered my office, I was wondering if they were talking about my wife, Becca. And if so, why was she doing something to Phil? This overheard remark alarmed me. In fact, it really bothered me. I sat down, turned on the computer, and started the program I had been working with for the last couple of days. But looking at the screen, I was not thinking about work. I was thinking about the last corporate Christmas party. I don't really like dancing, except for country westerns, and Becca loves dancing, so it's not unusual for her to dance with me for a third of the dances, and the other 2/3 with anyone who invites her. The company's last party was no exception, and although she danced with several others, I noticed that she danced quite a few dances with Phil. I commented on it on the way home. A shadow of a smile quickly crossed her face and immediately disappeared. I expected her to say something like, "Well, Rob Daltrey, I really believe you're jealous or something." But she didn't. What she said was, "He was a better dancer than everyone else, so yes, I danced with him more than with anyone else." I couldn't push her without getting into territory that I knew I should stay away from. But what I knew about Phil was that he was a womanizer, the kind of guy who attracted comments like, he'd use a snake if someone held her head. And I wasn't so happy that Becca spent so much time with him. Maybe it was a little unwise of me since I was there and watching them, and Becca never gave me a reason to doubt her, but I just didn't trust Phil. I stopped thinking about it and got to work. It couldn't have been my Becca they were talking about, since the only place she could get in touch with Phil was at corporate events, and the next one was a corporate picnic, and it was still a few months away. That evening, on my way home, I was thinking about what I would cook for dinner. It was Becky's card night, so I'll be on my own. Becca was an avid bridge player, and I hated this game. I liked playing cards, but I just couldn't play bridge well enough. Becca belonged to a band that played every Wednesday night, and so I cooked for myself. There was a lot of food in the house, but after looking at all the possibilities and not finding anything attractive, I decided to treat myself and go eat. I stopped at the Olive Garden and was eating a salad when I saw Bill and Helen Winters come in. It seemed strange to me since Helen was part of a group that was going to play bridge, but then I realized that everyone sometimes needs a day off. They noticed me and I waved back. They joined the couple at the table, and I busied myself with my veal scallopini. When I got home, I turned on the TV and watched for a while and then went to bed. I took the book I was reading from the bedside table, settled down on the pillows, and read until I fell asleep. In the morning, I got up and took a shower, even though I knew it would make Becca angry. I'd wake up half an hour earlier than she needed to get up, and the shower would wake her up, and she'd always get mad at me about it. I just shrugged my shoulders and told her to come home early after a card game, and she would get enough sleep. I was sitting in the kitchen having my first cup of coffee and flipping through the morning newspaper when Becca came into the kitchen. She poured herself a cup of coffee and sat down opposite me. I put down the newspaper and said, "Did you have a good night playing cards?" "God, no, and in general I almost regret that I went." "I thought you liked bridge." "Yes, but last night I was paired with Helen Winters, and she's the worst bridge player I've ever seen. She did so many stupid things that I wanted to crawl over the table and strangle her." Suddenly, I had bad thoughts. I had very, very bad thoughts. "Helen Winters? I've never heard you complain about her before." "That's probably because she's never upset me like she did last night." I finished my coffee, got up and put the cup in the sink and said, "I hope you don't have to see her too often." As I was driving to work, an obvious question popped into my head. Where was Becca last night? She clearly wasn't playing cards with Helen Winters. It gnawed at me all day, and by 4 o'clock in the afternoon I decided to take a chance and called Helen. "Hello? Helen, this is Rob Daltrey. I'm sorry to bother you, but there's something bothering me, and before I talk to Becca about it, I thought I should prepare myself with some information." "About what?" "What happened to the bridge group on Wednesday night?" "We have run out of players." Marge Holbrook left Dan and ran off with the truck driver. Bev Marshall got married and her husband moved her to Jamesville, and Mary Ellen found out that her husband used her card night to play with one of the secretaries at the firm where he works, so she quit the game. We just didn't have enough people to play. What's the matter? Becca seems to lose her temper every Wednesday and get terribly bitchy with me. I've had enough. and I'm trying to organize my thoughts before I sit down to talk to her about it. You'd think she couldn't calm down in these 3 months. Oh my God, it's just a card game. Exactly my thoughts. Thank you, Helen. 3 months? 3 fucking months? Where the hell has Becca been going every Wednesday for the last 3 months? And what the hell was she doing? And almost as much as it was the answer to those questions, the memory of O came. Becca and Phil, if they can do it. Something was definitely rotten enough in the Danish kingdom, but I was going to get a lot more information before I ran into Becca. I was going to wait until next Wednesday to get answers, but I'm going to get answers. And God help Phil and my wife if what I was starting to think was true. Rebecca Ann Porter has been a part of my life since 9th grade. Becca was the first girl I dated and the first girl I kissed. We dated until the 10th grade. It was from time to time because her parents wouldn't let her have a steady boyfriend until she was in the 11th grade. On the first day of class, when we moved into the 11th grade, I asked Becca to be a couple with me, and she agreed. We dated for about 4 months, and then one day, just before Christmas break, she said she was breaking up with me. There was a guy who had just transferred from another state. He asked her out on a date, and she wanted to go with him. Without saying a word, I turned and walked away when she shouted, "Wait, Rob, wait." I was upset. No, I got really angry, and my attitude became like, okay, do you want to date another guy? Well, it works both ways. I ignored Becca, and all I did for the next 6 months was date at least half a dozen girls. I've been to parties or events a couple of times, and Becca was there too, but I tried to avoid her. A couple of times I saw her turn her head in my direction, pointedly turned away and left. Summer came and I got a job as a landscape designer, and a couple of times when I was coming home from work, my mom told me that Becca called and wanted me to call her back, but I never called back. Did I want this? Yes, it is. I missed her terribly, but pride kept me from picking up the phone and dialing her number. She left me, so use her and the horse she rode. What can I say? When you're a teenager and you get used to girls, you're allowed and probably even expected to be stupid. School started 2 weeks before Labor Day, and on the first day of my senior year, I was sitting in Mr. Patterson's room waiting for class to start when Becca sat next to me. I quickly looked around the room, but there were no empty seats where I could change. Becca saw me doing it and said, "There's no getting away from me, Rob, unless you want to skip class. But if you do, you're going to have to skip a lot of lessons because I'm going to sit next to you in every class we have together." Why? Why bother? Because I want to get back on good terms with you. Because I miss you. Because we had something good and I miss it. Do you miss me? You're the one who threw away everything we had. I didn't throw anything away, Rob. You just misunderstood everything. Did you get it wrong? You said you didn't want to date me anymore and I got it all wrong? You left before I could explain. Explain what? I didn't want to stop seeing you, Rob. I just wanted to date other guys. And I wouldn't be able to do that if we were a famous regular couple. I still want to date you. So what? Is that what you wanted? It wasn't what I wanted, so it hardly means that I got it wrong. You left me, Becca. You left me for some jerk who moved here from another city. I was not mistaken in this part. Then I heard, Mr. Daltrey, if you and Miss Porter don't mind, we can continue our classes. I looked back and saw that Mr. Patterson and everyone else in the class were looking at us. After the lesson was over, Becca stuck to me like glue and followed me down the hall. And just before Mrs. Osborne entered the room, Becca said, "I'll meet you in the cafeteria during lunch. Please, Rob, if you still don't want anything to do with me after lunch, I'll leave you alone." "Maybe," I said, entering the classroom. While Mrs. Osborne was babbling about what she expected of us, I was thinking about Becca and decided to meet her for lunch and see what she had to say. When I got to the cafeteria, Becca had already taken a table, and twice while I was walking through the queue, I saw her friends come to the table and start to sit down, but Becca said something and they walked away. As soon as I sat down, Becca immediately got down to business. "Rob, honey, I like you more than any other guy I've dated, but we're both still young and have no idea where life is going. I watched my parents' friends break up and divorce couple by couple. I promised myself that this would never happen to me. I'm going to find the right guy and do it right the first time. That means I have to date different guys, see what's out there, and find out about them so I can make informed judgments. And it's not just me, Rob. You have to do it too. Right now you think I'm the only one for you. But do you really know that? Have you dated other girls to have a basis for comparison? I know you've dated other girls, but you've never stayed with any of them long enough to get to know them. Gail was the one you were with the longest, but it was only 3 dates, so you really didn't get to know her that well, did you? She must have been watching me more closely than I was watching her if she knew how many dates I had with one girl. So what are you talking about, Becca? That I want to spend some time with you, but I don't want it to be something exceptional. We both need to see other people. I didn't know what to say, so I just sat there and stared at her in silence. I don't know what she was thinking, but after sitting for a few minutes and looking at me, she said, "You're going to get all the good girls, Rob. You'll have Labor Day weekend, the county fair, and the prom, but I want to be free to say yes if someone interesting asks me out. I will never turn down a date with you to go on a date with someone else, but I will not turn down interesting dates at other times." I sat in silence for a few more seconds, and then I said, "You just said that yourself. You told me that 3 dates with Gail aren't enough to really get to know her. How many dates does it take to really get to know someone? 10, 15, 20? Let's take 10. 10 dates, since your parents only allow you to meet on weekends, would take 3 months. I haven't seen you for 3 months now, and don't tell me you're going to date me at the same time you're dating another guy. It's not going to work, and you know it. Let's say you met with him on Friday, and he asked for a meeting on Saturday, and you said no, that you already had a date with me for that night. Do you think he's going to stick around for 3 months or more so you can go on 10 dates with him to get to know him better, while you alternate dates between him and me? What if you meet another interesting guy in the middle of all this? No, Becca, it just won't work for me." I got up and went to the next lesson. What Becca said struck a chord in me. It's true that I didn't really take the time to get to know the other girls I was dating. I dated, had fun, and then asked out another girl. I didn't spend much time with other girls because Becca was the one I wanted. It finally dawned on me that with Becca, I would be just one of many, and if I couldn't handle it, I needed to start seeing who else was out there. Labor Day came and went, and I still haven't called Becca. She called home and left a message a week before the county fair, but I never called back. I dated a couple of girls, but after a couple of dates, it was obvious that nothing would come of it. I turned 18 on October 29th, and my parents surprised me by giving me a car for my birthday. It allowed me to date more often, and having a car made me a little more attractive to some girls, and I started getting more dates. It was only on the 4th date with Pauline French that life became more interesting. There was nothing unusual about the first 2. I was actually kissed goodnight, and on the 3rd date, we kissed hot and hard, and I was definitely hoping for more. On the 4th day, we went to the burger barn for burgers and fries, and then went to play mini golf. We had just finished the last hole, and I asked Paulina what she wanted to do next. She looked me straight in the eye and asked, "Are you messing around, Rob?" It was one of those moments when you know that the wrong answer will change your life. The honest answer would have been no, but it wasn't just that. The thing is, I was a virgin. I got handiwork twice, not from Becky, but that was the limit of my love experience. The answer no would probably mean no more dates with Pauline, and the answer yes, if she wanted a demonstration, would show me that I was lying, and probably would mean no more dates with Pauline. And Pauline was a very attractive beauty. I gave the only answer that I thought could save the day. Not yet, but I've always wanted to try. It was an answer that saved me the embarrassment of admitting that I was still a virgin. Pauline looked at me for a second, and then she said, "That's the thing. I'm a virgin, and I'm going to stay a virgin until I get married." To say that I was stunned would be an understatement. I had no idea Pauline was like that. Let's face it, guys are chatting, and a dozen guys have dated Pauline, and none of them have ever said anything about Pauline that would make me expect something like this from her. I was still standing with my mouth open when she said, "Well, Rob, how about this?" Probably, that is, yes, of course. Okay, then take us to Stevens Point. When we got there, we climbed into the back seat and she lifted her skirt, pulled off her panties and said, "Let's get started." Pauline has obviously done this before because she started to guide me through it step by step. I was nervous as hell and almost afraid I was going to throw up, but after digging into myself, I found that it didn't bother me. I must have been doing it right because she was screaming, "Yes, oh yes," and her body was shaking. I have no idea how long I was doing this before she pushed me away and said, "Now it's my turn." I won't even try to describe my first received moment, except to say that I thought I had died and gone to heaven. When I took her home, she asked, "Tomorrow?" And of course I agreed. For the next 3 weeks, Pauline and I met 3 or 4 times a week, and each date ended at Stevens Point. At the end of those 3 weeks, I discovered that the girls were talking too. It was Monday morning, and I was just leaving Mrs. Osborne's classroom when Becca came up to me and said, "Bastard," and slapped me in the face. "I know what you were doing with Pauline French." So what? What's it got to do with you? It should be me, damn you. Now let's remember that I haven't spoken to Becca since our conversation in the cafeteria a few months ago. I saw her nearby, but I didn't talk to her. And if it seemed that she was going to head in my direction, I turned and kicked the other way. So seeing her in front of my face complaining about what I was doing to Pauline didn't make any sense to me. You're crazy, Becca. You're the one who pushed me away. So what the hell do you want? You should be mine, Rob. I've explained everything to you. And I told you that I'm not going to have anything to do with what you want. I'm not your Becca, and I haven't been yours since you broke up with me. Now, if you're not planning on hitting me again, I have to go to class. I want us to be together again, Rob. It's a little late for that, Becca. I'm with Pauline now, and we get along great. But she doesn't love you, Rob. She's just using you because you're the only one who's going to do what she likes. She's already talking about how hard it's going to be to find someone to take your place when she leaves for college. This was not news, as I knew it from the very beginning. I mean, she's going away to college. Neither did I, but she was going back east to Smith, and I was going to college closer to home. I also knew that even if Paulina and I went to the same college, we were not destined to live together. Becca was right that Pauline used me to get what she wanted, but I used Pauline to get the same thing. And suddenly I had to give it up because Becca wanted to be together again? I didn't think so. I really wish Becca would come back and everything would be the way it was before she broke us up. But I didn't think I could trust her, that she wouldn't want to date other guys if she found someone she thought might be interested in her. I'll never forget how and why she broke up with me in the first place. So I just shrugged and said, "Maybe so, Becca, but until she leaves, we're a couple. I have to go or I'll be late for class." I left her standing. Never underestimate the power of the sorority. It was 2 days after Becca slapped me, and I had just completed a very satisfactory 69. I felt warm and fluffy in the afterglow of my shock when Pauline said, "I talked to your ex-girlfriend yesterday." "Oh?" "She asked me to leave you so she could take you back." "And what did you say?" "I told her I'd think about it." "And what do you think about this idea? We're going to graduate in 4 months and I'm going to leave anyway, so I'm thinking, why not? Who knows, maybe someday I'll need her help. Does she think that if you leave me, I'll come back to her? And why not? She looks good and obviously cares about you." It's just not enough. I told Pauline about why we broke up, and then I said, I don't believe she won't do it again. And anyway, why would I fight her again just to try to touch her boobs after what I had with you? No thanks. If you leave me, I'll just go look for another girl who looks like you. You won't find any that sweet. I'm one of a kind, but maybe you know that yourself. She really wants you back, and that puts you in the driver's seat. Tell her you're going to look for someone to do what I do and see if she'll do it to get you back. Maybe it even has a bonus for you. What's the bonus? The prom is in 3 months, and many girls give their precious pearl to the prom. You already know that this won't happen to me, but you can make it happen to her. You sound like you've decided to do this, and you're trying to convince me that I'm going to come out of this winning. Well, honey, to be honest, I decided to do what she asked. I got up and reached for my trousers, and Pauline asked, "Where are you going?" "You just said it's over between us. I'm getting dressed to leave." "Hey, there's a cowboy up there." I didn't say it would be tonight or even this week. I just need to do it in time for you to invite her to the prom. Let's say a month or 6 weeks before that. I suppose that means we're not going to the prom? First of all, honey, you didn't ask me, and if you had, I would have answered, "I'm sorry, but my parents are taking me back east a week before graduation." I was standing with my trousers in my hands, not knowing what to do, and then Pauline said, "Come back here, honey, and let me blow on your pipe a little." I dropped my pants on the floor and went back to Pauline's bed. Pauline released me 7 weeks before prom, and the first thing I did was make a list of girls that other guys called easy. I've been on a date with Debbie Fisher 3 times and found out that the rumors about her are bullshit. Stella Felter was next on the list, another girl who became the target of shitty rumors. Before I could call Gail Luoma, another girl on the list of faithful Becca called me. "What are you doing, Rob? Why are you dating Debbie and Stella? You should be with me, Rob." "I think we've talked about this before, Becca. I want us to be together again, Rob." "I don't think so, Becca. I need a girl like Pauline. I'm very used to what we had, and I'm looking for a girl who can pick up where Pauline left off. I'll do whatever it takes to get us back together." "I seriously doubt that, Becca. I remember how hard I had to fight just to get my hand under your sweater. I'm serious, Rob. I'll do whatever it takes to get us back together." She wasn't as good as Pauline, but Pauline had a lot of practice, and Becca was really getting better with each date. Pauline didn't do it. She said she did it to stay a virgin. I lied and said it doesn't mean anything. She promised that she would give me her cherry at graduation. Maybe at the prom, but not now. What's the difference then or now? I'm not ready yet, Rob. Maybe at the prom, and I'm just saying maybe. Becca really gave up her virginity at the prom, and after that there was no turning back. Becca and I were a steady couple through high school and all 4 years of college, and she never dated anyone but me or told me she wanted to date other guys. We got married 3 months after graduation, and the next 11 years were some of the best in my life. I thought our marriage was forever, that we were rock solid, but now I wasn't sure. On Wednesday, I parked my rental car in a place where I could see Becky's car in her company's parking lot. She got out at 5 minutes past 5, and when she pulled out of the parking lot, I followed her. She drove across town and stopped in front of a ranch-style house on Beacon Street. I slowed down, parked, and watched her get out of the car, walk over and enter the house. She didn't knock or ring the bell, just opened the door and walked in. I sat and watched, and 5 minutes later Charlie pulled up and got out of the car with a woman who wasn't his wife. Mel and his charming wife Judy followed by 2 other couples I didn't know. The next one to arrive was the one I had hoped not to see. Phil drove up, parked, and entered the house. 2 more couples appeared, and it looked like they were the last. By the time the last pairs appeared, it was already getting dark. I waited another half hour, then got out of the rental car and walked up to the house. I hoped there weren't any nosy neighbors peeking out of the windows as I walked around the house that everyone had entered. Finally, I found a window where the blinds were cut, looked inside, and saw a sight I had never seen before. It was a real orgy. Charlie used Mel's wife. 2 guys were working on the woman Charlie came with. She was on all fours with her mouth pressed against the man in front of her, and the other guy was pinning her from behind. Another woman was riding a guy, and a man was standing next to her and watching her stroke herself, but Becky wasn't in the room. I moved on in search of another place from where I could look inside. I went to the gate, slowly opened it, and went out into the backyard. The backyard was enclosed by a 6-foot fence, so the owner must not have felt the need for curtains or blinds. I could step aside and look through the sliding glass door to the patio into what seemed to be the family room of the house. And in this room was that worthless fool that I was married to. I turned away, feeling sick at the sight. Before I reached the gate, I threw up on the wall of the house. I went back to the rental car, drove it back to the parking lot, and drove home. On the way home, I was thinking about what I should do. I came up with a dozen ideas, and I had to discard them all because any one of them would have put me in jail for a very long time. One of them would have brought me the death penalty. I needed a way to get 4 people to pay while still being free. Phil, Mel, and Charlie will be pretty easy to get to since they all work for me. I couldn't fire them, at least not for what they did to me, but I would find a way to get to them. It was necessary to come up with something special for Becky, too. I returned home, made myself a pretty strong drink, and then settled down on the couch to watch TV. I was watching something, I don't know what exactly, but there was a group of Hell's Angels on a motorcycle racing somewhere on the screen, and as I looked at them, an idea began to form in my head. When Becca came home, I was lying in bed pretending to be asleep. She took a quick shower. She always claimed it was for me because 5 card players were smoking and she didn't want me to smell her stink, and then climbed into bed and snuggled up to me. I lay there and wondered how tender she was to me after what she had just done. I was still thinking, falling asleep. The next day, I started making phone calls and collecting information. Using the information I gathered, I made a few more phone calls, and on Friday I met a man at lunch, and we made a deal. On Friday night, when I got home from work, I told Becca to put on dancing shoes, because we were going to go to the Golden Spur for the good old country dances. I drank 1 glass in the Spur, and stuck a good half-dozen doubles in Becca. We danced and had a good time, and around midnight I told Becca it was time to go. Becca whined that she still wanted to have fun. Maybe tomorrow again, baby, but I've had a long day and I'm tired. In the parking lot, I walked her to her car, and when we approached a white van parked next to it, a man got out and asked, "Is that her?" Indeed it is. He took an envelope out of his pocket and handed it to me. Do you want to count it? There's no need for that. He turned around and opened the side door of the van where the 5 guys were sitting. 2 of them jumped out, grabbed Becca, and dragged her into the van when she screamed, "What the hell is going on here? What the fuck are you doing?" When the rag was shoved into her mouth, I said, "You said you still want to have fun, so enjoy it." Marcus closed the van door and I said, "Remember, there are no visible footprints." "No problem. When do you want to do the second part?" "Let's see how it goes. If everything goes well, maybe in 2 weeks." He got into the van and drove away. Did Becca like multiple partners? She's going to have a full weekend. I overslept on Saturday and then went out and played 18 holes. I went out to dinner, went to the cinema, and went to bed pretty early. I was working at home on Sunday and I got a call around 6. I opened the garage door and about 5 minutes later, a white van drove in and I closed the door behind it. Marcus got out of the van and I asked, "How did it go?" At first she resisted, but the third time she decided that since it was going to happen anyway, she could go with the flow. 32 and more than once if you're interested. And the movie? I had 5 cameras working. I'll put it all on CDs and deliver it to you at the end of the week. He opened the side door of the van and I saw Becca sleeping on the floor. I don't think there was a single inch of her body that didn't have dried liquid on it. Marcus noticed my look and said, "In the end, she almost fainted when half a dozen guys jumped on her and shot her. She was very tired and didn't sleep until I loaded her into the van. He helped me carry her into the house, then up the stairs, and we threw her on the bed in the spare bedroom. We shook hands and he said, 'I know the plan, but if she angers you again before then, be sure to let me know.' The guys really liked it. I opened the door and he backed the van out, and I closed the door and went to watch TV. When I went to work in the morning, Becca was still asleep. When I walked into the office, I smiled and said good morning to Phil, Mel, and Charlie, just like I did every day of the week. Let them think that I was an ignorant husband. It would make it easier for me to get them. I spent part of the day on the internet, getting information that I hoped I could use to my advantage. When I returned home in the evening and entered the garage through the adjoining door, I saw Becca at the sink and she looked pretty shabby. She must have said she was sick at work. She turned around and screamed, "Bastard!" and threw a plate at me. I dodged and she crashed into the wall behind me. I quickly walked up to her and grabbed her hands. "Oh, you motherfucker, how could you do this to me?" "It was easy when I found out how you really spend your Wednesday nights." I saw the look of fear on her face and she tried to pull away. I sat her down on a chair and she asked, "What are you going to do?" "It will depend on what you do. You're doing what I want and we can do without it. You're not going to do what I want, and you're going to walk out of here on your ass." "I don't want that. I love you, Rob. I love you very much. I don't need this shit. You can't love me and do what you're doing. What do you think I felt when I found out that you were making love to the guys I work with? The same guys who smile at me and wish me good morning, laughing behind my back at Becky's clueless husband. But what really pisses me off is that while I'm sitting at the damn computer, reading about this shit and dreaming of doing it, you're doing it behind my back." "You? Would you do that?" "Damn right I would. That's what's going to happen, Becca. Not this Wednesday, but in a week, starting this Wednesday, you will have your little party right here in this house. I don't care what you do to make it happen, but you do it, or you walk out of here on your ass, and you won't let anyone know what I know. Do you understand what I'm talking about?" "Yes. I'm thinking, but how do I get them to come here? I'm going to make Phil, Mel, and Charlie think I'm leaving town to sort out some business related to my father's estate. Tell them you want to do it on your own bed. Lead them on. Ask them if they want to use Rob's wife on Rob's bed. The bastards will probably jump at this chance. As soon as it works, I'm going in, and I want to see the faces of these jerks when I get naked and use Mel's wife in her ass. Until then, you'll be in the spare bedroom. Whether you come back to the bedroom with me or not will depend on how you do what I said and on the long conversation I'll have with my ass-wiping colleagues when it's over. I'm going to get their version of what happened and how, and then I'm going to compare it with what you're going to tell me. After that, I will decide whether we have a future or not. I'm not kidding, Becca. Phil and the boys aren't. I repeat, I'm not kidding. They must not know that I found out about your love sessions. If I have the slightest suspicion that they are aware, I will know that you have enlightened them and you will leave here. Now where's my fucking dinner?" Becca was wise enough not to promise until she had talked to the others for part of that day and all of Tuesday. But on Wednesday morning, she asked, "What do you want me to do tonight?" I think you should go if you're going to get them to come here next Wednesday. Just remember what I said about someone finding out that I'm no longer ignorant of what's going to happen to you. On Wednesday morning, Marcus called me at work. We met for lunch, and he gave me 2 CDs that he made out of Becky's love, and we discussed the next part of my plan. When she returned home, I was already awake, but my bedroom door was closed, so she took a shower and went to the spare bedroom. In the morning, she said, "You were right. They jumped at the chance to make me on your bed and in your house. Actually, since they think you'll be gone all week, they wanted to come every night, but I told them no. Just out of curiosity, if I didn't know about you and them and was really going to leave town for the whole week, would you invite them every night? Maybe. Do you love me? You really love me, don't you? And yet you would use 3 of my colleagues in my house and on my bed every day when I was away? And you wonder why I don't believe you when you say you love me. It's just love. Absolute wild, pure love. Once a week, I allow myself to go crazy and be an absolute fool. It satisfies my need and it doesn't harm you in the least. You were never supposed to find out. I think now is the right time for this, so tell me how and why it started." "It started at your last Christmas party. I was dancing with Phil and he came up and said, 'You're damn beautiful, Becca, and I want to use you.' I was drinking, as you know, and I was in a pretty good mood. I was a little shocked by what he said, but I played along and said, 'Can you do anything?' No one had any complaints. I smiled at him and asked if he had rave reviews, and he said he had a pair. I thought that would be the end of it, and I almost told you what happened so that we could both laugh. But then I decided it was better not to say anything. First of all, I wasn't sure if everything would turn out well if you went to work and beat Phil up. Secondly, I was worried that you might get angry because I let it go so far. I knew I wouldn't see Phil until the company's picnic in the summer, so I forgot about it. A couple of months later, I went to Helen's Bridge and found that we didn't have enough players. And actually, Helen said that we would probably have to disband the band if we couldn't find new players. And that's what happened. But you were in Denver that night on a business trip, and I didn't want to go home and look at an empty house, so I went to Bud's bar for a drink after I left Helen. I was already drunk when Phil slid into the seat next to me. He asked if I wanted another drink, and I agreed. We sat and talked. Anyway, a couple more drinks, and then Phil said, "You've had plenty of time to think about it, so what do you say?" I asked him what it was about, and he replied, "What we talked about at the Christmas party. I really would like to use you." I thought about it for maybe a minute, and then I said, "Okay, let's do it." It was a combination of the booze and my curiosity about himself, confidence and how he just went after what he wanted and didn't worry about getting slapped or me running over to you and telling you. Maybe there was some curiosity about whether he was as good as he seemed to think, and I think you could have added a pinch of lust, but I went with him to his apartment and ended up staying the night. So what? He was good. He had great stamina and recovered quickly. He was like an Energizer rabbit. He just kept going and going. And before you even asked, yes, I liked it. In the morning, he asked if we could do it again, and I told him I didn't think so, but he gave me his mobile number and told me to call him if I changed my mind. The following Wednesday, I called Helen, and she said that the bridge group had broken up. I remembered how hard I made love to Phil, and you weren't waiting for me at home anyway, so I called him. He was just as good that night, and I told him I'd see him next Wednesday. He was studying with me when Mel came in. Phil told me that he told Mel how hot I was, and Mel said he wanted to try it. Phil finished, and I tried to get up and leave, but Phil held me back while Mel took me. What about me, Becca? How do you think I'll feel when I find out? I've never worried about it because you'll never know. I was very careful not to do anything that would give me away. Scammers are always caught, Becca. It doesn't matter what you did to hide it. You can't control what others do. The first blunder was that I overheard Mel and Charlie saying things in the office that I shouldn't have heard, and it got me thinking. But what really killed you was that instead of staying at home and cooking myself dinner one night, I decided to go eat and guess who was at the restaurant I went to. Helen and her husband. And the next morning you told me how you had a bad night because you were stuck with Helen as a partner. I looked at her for a few seconds and then I said, "You lied to me." Becca turned away from me and I asked, "How many were there?" Still not looking at me, she said, "Maybe 6 in the last 5 years. You're sitting here saying you love me, but you've been making love behind my back for over 5 years. You have a strange idea of what love is, Becca. I really love you. I can't help it if I like love. I'm always there for you. I've never wanted anyone else except for one night or 1 week. There was no love here. There was no attachment here. I became a wild cheater from time to time, and I loved it. Have you done this with anyone else I know? No. The only people you know are Phil, Mel, and Charlie. I don't know who I should be mad at the most. At you for what you did, or at myself for foolishly loving you, trusting you, and not being smart enough to understand what you were doing. I'm sorry, honey. I love you, I really do. But the cheating part of me comes out when I meet an interesting guy. It was just love, honey. I swear to God, it never had anything to do with my love for you. You're the only one I love. Just not enough to leave the other roosters alone. She turned away, and I got up and got to work. I called everyone at the office and told them that I would be out of town next week because I had to fly back to Michigan to resolve some issues related to my father's estate. While I'm gone, Phil will be in charge. I used to make love to Becca 4 or 5 times a week, but I haven't touched her since I saw her making love to 3 guys the night I was watching her. I was in pain, and Becca knew how long it had been since I'd touched her, and she knew how I'd feel. She decided to try to get me into her bed. She wore minimal clothes, allowed me to see her naked, and even left her bedroom door open so I could see, but I ignored her. In the end, I told her to stop it and that I wasn't going to have anything to do with her until Wednesday and my conversation with Phil, Mel, and Charlie. I was working around the house on Monday, and when Becca came home from work, I had dinner ready, and I did the same thing on Tuesday. Just before Becca left for work on Wednesday, I asked, "How much time should I give you before I go in? I want to make sure everything is going well before I go in. It starts at 6:30, so give us about an hour." She was silent for a second and then asked, "Will no one get hurt?" "Rest assured, everything will be fine, Becca." That evening, I parked a little further down the street and watched until all the players had gathered, and then I left, had dinner at Olive Garden, and went to the cinema. When I got home, the house was dark and quiet. Becca was used and slept on the couch. She hadn't cleaned up, and there were liquid stains on the carpet and on the leather sofa. The beds in my room and hers were in a terrible mess, and the sheets were wet with liquid. It must have been a hell of a party. I went down to the basement and checked the recording devices, and it turned out that all the spy cameras I had installed were working. I smiled and went upstairs. I changed the sheets and pillowcases on my bed, then I carried Becca upstairs and put her on her bed, and then I went to my bed and fell asleep like a baby. I was sitting at the kitchen table drinking coffee and reading the morning paper when Becca came into the room. I stood up and hugged her. I hugged her and kissed her, and then I said, "I'm sorry, baby, I wanted to be here, but I got into trouble." "What kind of trouble?" "I went to the bar and had a couple of drinks to get up the courage for what I was going to do, and some screamer started pushing me, and I beat the shit out of him. The police took me to the prison and held me there for about 6 hours until they questioned all the witnesses. Witnesses confirmed that the screamer started all this and that I acted only in self-defense. I couldn't call you because I was busy with all this. I was hoping they would let me go in time for me to come to the party, but that didn't happen." "What now?" "I'm going to a party with you next week. I don't think I can live another week like the previous 2. I love you, honey. I love you and I need you. Don't worry, baby. You did what I told you to do. It's not your fault that my plan didn't work out the way I wanted it to. Tomorrow we will go out and celebrate our new start. I'm not going to make love to you until we get home. I want my first time inside you to be good, which means we have to give your love box a chance to close. I know she must be a little loose after last night, and I wish you'd be a little tighter for me. Okay? Whatever you want, honey, as long as you come back." When she left for work, I started recording spy cameras and compressed all the recordings onto a CD, and then started recording copies. On Friday evening, we went to the Golden Spur, danced, drank, and had a good time. She got into the car, slid next to me, and reached for my zipper, and when I didn't stop her, she smiled. It was pretty strong for me. She was working hard on me and didn't notice when I pulled up to the white van. She screamed when the door opened and hands tore her away from me and pushed her into the van. Marcus handed me another envelope and I said, "You'll do the next part on Monday. Do you think you'll be ready by then?" "Now I'm ready. I was just waiting for you to tell me." Saturday and Sunday were busy with housework. I removed the spy cameras and recording equipment, as well as all traces of Becky's party on Wednesday night, and I even managed to hit 18 holes on both days. Around 7 o'clock on Sunday evening, Marcus called me and said only, "It's done. See you on Monday." On Monday, I asked Phil to stop and have a couple of drinks with me after work. I'm going to make some changes to the office, and I need your input. I don't want to do it here because sometimes it feels like the walls in this place have ears. At 5:15, Phil joined me at the bar. He took a drink, and I started telling him about my plans to reorganize the office. It was all bullshit, but he didn't know that. I held his attention while Marcus sat on the stool next to him, and when the needle slid into Phil, he had enough time to wonder before the injection made him doze off. Marcus and I helped him outside. It was just two friends helping a friend who had overdone it, and when we got Phil outside, I helped Marcus put him in a white van. I thanked Marcus for his help, and he got into the van and drove away. Marcus and I went to high school together, and shortly after graduation, he was arrested for selling marijuana and served 2 years in prison. He always claimed that he was framed, but I didn't know if it was true or not. But I knew that when Marcus was released, he rarely did anything legal. He was addicted to illegal substances, gambling, loan sharking, and some other things that I was happy not to know about. He learned a lot in prison, made dozens of contacts, and used all this to good effect in his various activities. There was nothing he couldn't get for you, and nothing he wouldn't do for you if the price was right. His help didn't cost me anything because when he got out of prison, I lent him money and helped him get back on his feet, and he never forgot that. In fact, not only did it cost me nothing, but I also earned money from it. He gave me $1,000 for taking Becca the first time she drove a white van, and another $1,000 when I gave her to him on Friday. He got his money back and then sold it. He was getting $50 a serving from the 32 guys who used it for the first time. I do not know what he cooked over the last weekend, but whatever it was a net profit. He got his money back when he sold her to a motorcycle club that was about to flee to Mexico. They were going to use her until they were ready to return home, and then try to get their money back by selling her like a fool to a brothel in Mexico. I didn't expect to ever see Becca again. I didn't know when or even if I'd see Phil again, but if I did, I bet you could shove a telephone pole at him and he'd probably have a very sore jaw. Best of all, he would know why, because part of the deal was that somewhere on the line someone was going to tell him, "Damn glad you used that stupid Becca." On Tuesday, 283 packages were sent to friends, relatives, and neighbors of Phil, Mel, and Charlie. I do not know how this affected Mel since his wife was part of the group, but hopefully his relatives and neighbors did not know about Mel and Judy's hobby and would let them know in no uncertain terms what they think about it. And then this happened. Maybe there wasn't any problem with Judy, but Mel knew he had a problem. Me. He must have received the package on Tuesday when he came home from work, because on Wednesday he got sick, and on Thursday morning I got a call from the HR department that Mel called and immediately resigned. Charlie found out pretty quickly what his wife thought about it. She received the package on Wednesday, called work, and told him not to worry about returning home because the locks in the house had already been changed. The next day he whined that she had robbed him. Apparently, she hit the banks and took everything before calling him and telling him to go to hell. Of course, Charlie didn't tell people at work why she kicked him out, and I didn't send the package to anyone in the office, except for me. On Thursday, when the mail was delivered, I left the office, went up to Charlie, and without saying a word, hit him with all my might. His chair rolled back, and when he tried to get up, I hit him again. He fell to the floor, and I started kicking him in the ribs and groin. 2 guys pulled me away from him, and one of them said, "What the fuck, Rob, are you crazy?" I handed Dave an envelope, which I tucked into my belt, and said, "He's lucky I don't have a gun in my office. Otherwise, the fool would be dead by now." Dave looked at a couple of photos, called Charlie a worthless cocksucker, and spat on him. I leaned over and said, "It's all personal and unrelated to work, so I can't fire you, but you need to find another job and fast, because from now on, I'm going to do this to you every fucking day when you walk into this office." I got up, kicked him hard, and went back to my office. Charlie didn't show up for work on Friday, and on Monday morning, the HR department called me and told me that I had lost another member of my team. "What the hell are you doing there, Rob? This is the second one in a week. It's just that I called 3 of them into the office and told them their work wasn't up to standard and they needed to get their heads out of their asses or I was going to get rid of them. I think they decided they couldn't handle the program and decided to leave rather than have a layoff on their record." "You said 3, and who's the third one?" "Phil Traynor." "Will we hear from him too?" "Absolutely, definitely. He hasn't called or shown up for 3 days, and that's grounds for dismissal. I'm doing paperwork right now, and you should get it later this evening. I never got any physical satisfaction from Mel, but I got a form of payback. Based on the materials I sent them, His neighbors decided that he was a pervert, and they didn't want him in the neighborhood where he could get to their children. He was so angry that he told them to fuck off. Acts of vandalism began, and after his house and cars were damaged to the amount of about $30,000, he understood the message, put his house up for sale, and moved in. Given the economy and the current housing market, he should have lost money on the deal. I stopped by the police station and filed a missing persons report on Becky. I told the officer who accepted the report that I didn't want her to come back. I just thought it should be on the record that she was missing. I showed him the photos I'd taken during the threesome and told him I'd found them on the kitchen table when I got home from work and she wasn't there. I think that when she received the photos in the mail, she thought that I would definitely find out, so she packed her things and ran away. Why? Would you hurt her? I don't think we'll ever know for sure, but we probably won't. I'd probably like to know why she didn't tell me so I could join. It's been 2 years now, and no one has seen or heard from Phil. Marcus may know what happened to him, but I don't want to know enough to ask. I have a rough idea of what happened to Becca and where she is. Well, maybe not where she is, but I have a hunch about what she's doing. Marcus told me that the bikers actually sold her to a Mexican brothel. It looks like someone was looking for Gringa to take part in some of their special promotions. Those of you who have been to Tijuana have probably heard about these special promotions.